Hey there! Let's chat about Dinah, 1982, an absolute gem of a coming-of-age comedy drama directed by Barry Levinson. It's actually his very first gig as a director. The story takes us back to Baltimore in '59, where a group of childhood pals meet up for a wedding. Of course, they end up chatting about the good old days, squabbling over the silliest things, and facing the inevitable bumps of adulthood. So, what's the scoop with this bunch? You've got 6 friends in their early 20s hanging out at their favourite diner, musing over life, love, and what lies ahead. Eddie Simmons, Steve Guttenberg. He's got wedding jitters, and to top it off, his fiancée has to ace a football trivia test before he puts a ring on it. Boogie Chef Tell, Mickey Rourke. This guy's got the charm but can't resist the craps, a struggling law student and a bit of a womanizer, constantly in a pickle over gambling debts. Billy Howard, Tim Daly. The sensible one, back home from grad school, he's suddenly faced with news of a surprise baby. Shrevey Schreiber, Daniel Stern. Married but kinda lost in the whole adulting thing. Distracted by his record collection, he barely notices his wife, Beth, played by Ellen Barkin. Fenwick, Kevin Bacon. The rich kid with no direction, he's on a constant bender trying to shirk his cushy background and life's pressures. Modell, Paul Reiser. Always the comedian with his quirky takes, he's that friend who'd rather joke than outright ask for what he wants. This flick isn't about flashy plot twists, it's about real conversations and those messy, fun friendships as the guys inch closer to grown-up life. These days, Dinah is hailed as a cult classic and one of the go-to films about guy friendships. Since its debut on May 7th, 1982, the film pulled in $14 million, not bad against its $5 million budget. Critics adore it, giving it a solid 92% on Rotten Tomatoes, and fans aren't far behind with a 7/10 on IMDb. Want to catch it? Dinah is just a stream away on platforms like Google Play. Dive into this nostalgic ride anytime. Hey folks, let's take a wild ride back to the 80s with Safari 3000, a 1982 action comedy adventure that's packed with laughs, thrills, and epic road trip vibes. Picture this, David Carradine, Stockard Channing, and the legendary Christopher Lee tearing up the African terrain. So here's what's up. We've got Stockard Channing as J.J. Dalton, your go-getter photojournalist with big dreams of capturing a jaw-dropping off-road race across Africa. She ropes in a race car driver, Eddie Miles, played by the one and only David Carradine, to get in on the action. But of course, it's not all smooth sailing. They're up against the wily and wicked Baron von Dorn, brought to life by Christopher Lee. He's got his eyes on the prize and will do anything to nab that win. Why should you give it a shot? Zooming action. Get ready for heart-pounding racing scenes with all sorts of off-road rides navigating through gritty African terrain. Laughs galore. From slapstick to snappy dialogue, this movie knows how to tickle your funny bone. Exotic vibes. With Africa as the backdrop, you'll feel like you're part of an epic safari adventure. Classic villain alert. Christopher Lee, as the arrogant Baron von Dorn, cranks out some seriously villainous charm. Fun fact time. Did you know Safari 3000 was initially supposed to be a serious racing flick? But swoosh, in comes the rewrite, making it a comedy after the success of gems like the Cannonball Run. And yep, they filmed a bunch of it in Africa, keeping that adventurous spirit alive in the visuals. The movie hit theatres on May 7th, 1982. It might not have a fresh score on Rotten Tomatoes, and it sits at 4.7 out of 10 on IMDb, but hey, if you love a good road film, give it a whirl. You can catch Safari 3000 on streaming rental, and if you're chilling with MGM Plus, you get to watch it for absolutely nothing extra. Happy watching! Forbidden World, 1982, is a low-budget sci-fi horror flick brought to you by the legendary Roger Corman, the king of exploitation films. Directed by Alan Holzman, this movie has carved its place as a cult classic among fans of B-movies and sci-fi horror. Plot summary: imagine being a space ranger named Mike Colby. You're sent to this far-off planet called Zarbia, where some brainy scientists have been fooling around with genetic mutations to whip up a new food source. But surprise, surprise, their little science project goes haywire, giving rise to a deadly, ever-evolving creature known as Subject 20. This horror show starts picking off the crew one by one, and it's up to Colby and the rest of the survivors to put an end to it before it escapes or does them all in. Themes and style. The film takes a page, or several, from Alien, 1979, featuring that isolated, spine-chilling setting, a terrifying mutant entity, and a cocktail of gore with a splash of eroticism. Throw in some dark humour and scenes that feel like a bizarre dream, and you've got the vibe of this film. Despite its shoestring budget, Forbidden World impresses with practical effects, creepy creature designs, and a soundtrack filled with synthy goodness. Cast: Jesse Vint as Mike Colby, Dawn Dunlap as Tracy Baxter, June Chadwick as Dr. Barbara Glazer, Lyndon Childs as Dr. Gordon Hauser, Fox Harris as Dr. Timbergan, Legacy and Cult Status. Okay, so critics weren't exactly kind to Forbidden World when it first came out, but fast forward to today, and it's got a die-hard fanbase that loves its cheesy, schlocky sci-fi horror charm. Also known as Mutant, this film fits snugly into Roger Corman's collection of Alien-style knockoffs, cozying up with Galaxy of Terror, 1981. It made its comeback with a spruced-up Blu-ray release, part of Shout Factory's Roger Corman's cult classic series. Forbidden World first hit the screens on May 7th, 1982. It managed to snag a 57% critic score on Rotten Tomatoes and a solid 5 out of 10 on IMDb. Not too shabby, right? Want to check it out? Forbidden World is rocking Tubi and is available to watch for free. Grab some popcorn, kick back, and get ready for a trip back to the 80s with this wacky sci-fi horror ride. Hey there, movie buffs! Let's chat about a flick from the early 80s that might just take you on a nostalgic trip. Paradise, 1982. Directed by Stuart Gillard, this adventure romance flick stars the charming Phoebe Cates and Willie Ames. If you're thinking it sounds a bit like The Blue Lagoon, you're right, they have a lot in common. Set in the Middle East way back in the 1820s, the film kicks off with David, a young Brit played by Willie Ames, and Sarah, a sweet and sheltered girl brought to life by Phoebe Cates. The duo is tagging along with a caravan when, all of a sudden, they're ambushed by some nasty slave traders led by a baddie named Kadir. Left with no choice but to hightail it out of there, David and Sarah escape with their guide into the unknown wilderness. Sadly, their guide meets a grim fate, so the two of them find themselves leaning on each other for survival. Wandering through the desert's harshness, they stumble upon a stunning hidden paradise near a waterfall. As you might expect, sparks fly, and they fall for each other while navigating the ups and downs of survival and growing up in such a mesmerizing yet dangerous zone. When Paradise graced theatres on May 7th, 1982, it reeled in over $5 million. Critics weren't exactly throwing roses, chalking it up as a Blue Lagoon knockoff. Over on Rotten Tomatoes, it had a whopping 0% from the critics. But hey, fans are a bit kinder on IMDb with a 5 out of 10 rating. Despite the mixed reviews, it carved out a cult following, especially because of Phoebe Cates' magnetic performance and the stunning cinematography. The film's romantic and slightly daring vibes also stirred quite a bit of attention back in the day. If you're in the mood to give it a watch, you won't find it on streaming services, but a fan has kindly uploaded it on YouTube. Check out the link in the description if you're curious to see this 80s gem. Enjoy! Hey there, movie buffs! If you're into epic adventures and legendary warriors, you're going to want to check out Conan the Barbarian, a classic from way back in 1982. Directed by John Milius and co-written by Milius and Oliver Stone, this fantasy flick is where Arnold Schwarzenegger first flexed his muscles as Conan, the warrior on a quest for revenge against the sinister warlord Thulsa Doom, played by the iconic James Earl Jones. And here's a cool tidbit. This whole saga is based on a character dreamed up by Robert E. Howard way back in the 1930s. The story meet Conan, just a regular kid until Thulsa Doom's gang storms in, tortures his village, and takes him captive. He's tossed into the life of a slave, but as fate would have it, he's trained as a gladiator and becomes a force to be reckoned with. Once he's free, Conan teams up with some interesting folks like Subotai, a thieving friend played by Jerry Lopez, and Valeria, a badass warrior brought to life by Sandal Bergman. Together, they storm Doom's creepy cult and square off with sorcery and swords. Why it's awesome. Conan the Barbarian is like the ultimate mashup of swords, sorcery, and straight-up badassery. It brings to life epic battles and deep thoughts about power and destiny, all set to one heck of an orchestral score by Basil Poldoris. The film isn't one for long dialogues, it's all about the visuals and the larger-than-life presence of ANNIIE, why it matters. This movie was a game-changer for ANNIIE, launching him into the stratosphere of action superstars. And let's not forget, it kicked off a whole wave of sword and sorcery movies in the 80s. Conan did so well it spawned a sequel, Conan the Destroyer, in 1984, and even got a reboot in 2011, though they didn't quite hit the cult status of the original. And for those who've seen it, some lines like "What is best in life" are totally quotable gold. Released on May 14th, 1982, Conan the Barbarian raked in nearly $70 million. Critics over at Rotten Tomatoes give it a 64% thumbs up, while it scores a solid 6.9 out of 10 on IMDb. Want to see what all the fuss is about? You can stream Conan the Barbarian on rental services across the internet, including good old Google Play. Grab some popcorn and dive into this epic saga. Hey there, horror fans, ready for a spine-tingling throwback with a twist? Let me tell you about The House Where Evil Dwells, a supernatural shocker from 1982 directed by Kevin Connor and featuring big names like Edward Albert, Susan George, and Doug McClure. This flick cleverly combines ghostly chills with a haunted house vibe, all set in the mystical land of Japan. Plot summary. So here's the scoop. American couple Ted and Laura Fletcher, played by Edward Albert and Susan George, pack up and move to Japan because of Ted's job. They find this enchanting old house in Kyoto that seems perfect. But boy, are looks deceiving. Their pal Alex, that's Doug McClure, tries to clue them in on the house's creepy history, but they just brush him off. Little do they know, the place is haunted by the angry spirits of a samurai, his cheating wife, and her lover. Talk about drama! This love triangle ended in a bloodbath centuries ago, and now the ghosts are having a field day, messing with Ted and Laura's heads. Hallucinations, strange goings-on, and a terrifying showdown are all in store. Themes and style. The film digs into themes like revenge, possession, and the risks of ignoring the past. Expect an atmosphere that's super eerie, with touches of classic Japanese ghost stories, and those practical effects that scream early 80s horror. Reception. So how did folks react? Well, The House Where Evil Dwells got mixed to negative reviews back in the day. Some people were into its unique Japanese Western horror blend, but others thought it dragged and didn't deliver enough scares. Over time, though, it's picked up a little cult following among die-hard 80s horror fans. This spooky gem hit theatres on May 14th, 1982, and has racked up a not-so-great 4.5 out of 10 on IMDb. But hey, don't let that stop you. If you're curious and itching for a good ghost story, you can check out The House Where Evil Dwells on MGM Plus if you're a subscriber. Happy haunting! Hey there, movie buffs. Grab your popcorn and settle in because we're throwing it back to 1982 with the British drama film, The Return of the Soldier. This flick is based on Rebecca West's 1918 novel. It's got an all-star cast with Alan Bates, Julie Christie, Glenda Jackson and Anne Margaret. Plus, Dirk Bogarde worked his magic as the screenwriter, and Alan Bridges took the director's chair. Set right in the midst of World War I, we meet Captain Chris Baldry, played by the fantastic Alan Bates. He's an upper-class Brit who comes back home with a case of shell shock, which we now know as PTSD. His memory? Well, it's taken quite a hit, wiping out the last 15 years from his mind. Imagine forgetting your fancy life and your high-class wife, Kitty, Julie Christie. Instead, Chris is all about his past flame, Margaret Gray, Anne Margaret, a working-class gal. Margaret's moved on, married someone else, and is living a simpler life now. But when Chris returns, their past stirs some serious drama, leaving Kitty not too happy about it. Watching all this unfold is Jenny, the always amazing Glenda Jackson, Chris's cousin, who gives us the lowdown on the emotional rollercoaster his condition brings. The big question: should Chris be made to remember everything, or can he stay cozy in his past where he's happy? This film dives deep into memory, trauma, class divides, and the heartache of lost love. It makes you think, should someone's life be dictated by what society or the docs think is best? And let's not forget the raw emotional toll of war. It's not just about the battles. Critics gave a nod of approval to The Return of the Soldier, shouting out the stellar performances, especially by Alan Bates and Anne Margaret. The movie's got this slow and moody vibe that sticks true to West's novel, but hey, a few critics thought it played it a bit safe. The Return of the Soldier hit theatres on May 14th, 1982, and it's rocking a 6.7 out of 10 on IMDb. Want to watch it for free? You can stream it on the Tubi app. Wrong is Right is a 1982 satirical black comedy directed by Richard Brooks, inspired by Charles McCarry's novel The Better Angels. The film takes a jab at sensationalist journalism, government shadiness, and international tiffs, serving up a hefty dose of political and media satire. Plot summary: meet Patrick Hale, played by the legendary Sean Connery, your go-to TV reporter who stumbles into a tangled web of global conspiracy. We're talking nuclear weapons, Middle Eastern terrorists, shady politicians, and sly intelligence agencies. In his quest for the truth, Hale learns there are 2 suitcase nukes in play. Suddenly, everyone from the US government to foreign dictators and terrorist groups is scrambling to use the chaos for their own gains. The flick gives you a peek into a world where TV news bends to fit political whims, and truth takes a backseat to ratings and power grabs. Hale's journey through the maze of deceit and propaganda has him trying to crack the real story, all while dodging the pressure of those who wish to steer the narrative their way. Cast: Sean Connery as Patrick Hale, the slick, cynical TV journalist, Robert Conrad as General Wombat, Leslie Nielsen as President Lockwood. This movie's got a darkly funny take on some hefty issues. Think media sensationalism, government fibs, and terrorism. It paints a picture of a world where truths are up for barter and political hotshots aren't shy about spinning global dramas to their benefit. Wrong is Right didn't exactly make it rain at the box office when it hit the screens in '82. It raked in just $3.5 million against a $10 million budget. Critics weren't big fans either, slapping it with a 26% score on Rotten Tomatoes. Despite its rocky start, the movie's found a second wind thanks to its spot-on take on what we now know all too well: fake news, media gymnastics, and the mishmash of entertainment with journalism. Nowadays, some say it was way ahead of its curve, as its themes hit home even harder in our media-fueled political world. Wrong is Right is ready to stream for free on the Pluto TV app. So grab your popcorn and dive into this prescient blast from the past. Hey there, movie buffs! Let's dive into the 1982 flick Annie, a musical comedy drama that combines catchy tunes with a feel-good storyline. Directed by John Huston, it's based on the Broadway smash hit, inspired by the classic Little Orphan Annie comic strip. This movie features a fab cast with Aileen Quinn playing the adorable Annie, alongside Albert Finney as the mega-rich Oliver Daddy Warbucks, Carol Burnett as the hilarious Miss Hannigan, Anne Rain King as the kind-hearted Grace Farrell, Tim Curry as the shady Rooster Hannigan, and Bernadette Peters as the lovely Lily St. Regis. So, what's the story all about? Well, picture this. It's the 1930s in the heart of the Great Depression. Annie is an incredibly upbeat orphan dreaming of finding her real parents. But life in Miss Hannigan's grim orphanage is tough. Things take a turn when Annie gets a chance to live it up at the mansion of billionaire Oliver Warbucks. As she works her charm, Warbucks is ready to adopt her, but Annie's heart is set on finding her birth folks. Meanwhile, Miss Hannigan, her pesky brother Rooster, and his partner Lily cook up a scheme to nab the reward Warbucks is offering. This isn't just any film, it's a musical. Get ready to belt out some of these iconic songs. Tomorrow, Annie's Anthem of Hope. It's the Hard Knock Life. A gritty number from the Orphans. Maybe Annie dreaming of her parents. Little Girls, Miss Hannigan's goofy gripe about life. I think I'm gonna like it here. Annie dazzled by the mansion life. Easy Street. The devious plot is hatched with a jazzy beat. Annie took the box office by storm, earning $57 million on a $50 million budget. Rotten Tomatoes gives it a split 49% critics score, but fans on IMDb say it's a solid 6.7 out of 10. Opinions were mixed. Critics loved Carol Burnett's hilarious portrayal, but were iffy about some changes from the stage version. Despite all that, it's a family favourite thanks to its charming tunes and touching story. The 82 version of Annie is a classic by now, with several reboots including a TV movie in 1999 and a modern twist in 2014. Aileen Quinn became legendary for her role, but stepped out of the limelight afterward. Curious? You can stream Annie through services like Google Play. So grab your popcorn, lay back, and decide for yourself what all the fuss is about. Hey movie buffs, let's talk about a little gem from 1982 that's worth a watch if you haven't seen it yet. It's called Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid, directed by the one and only Carl Reiner, starring the legendary Steve Martin and the stunning Rachel Ward. This film is a brilliant comedy mystery that takes a hilarious swipe at classic film noir detective movies by ingeniously splicing in clips from actual 1940s and 1950s films to brew up a brand new storyline. So here's the scoop. Steve Martin dons the trench coat of Private Detective Rigby Reardon. He gets hired by the irresistible Juliet Forrest, played by Rachel Ward, to sniff out the truth behind her scientist father's fishy death. As Rigby digs in, he crosses paths with some pretty dangerous folks, famous Hollywood faces seamlessly edited in from classic films. Slick, right? Notable features. Classic film mashup. This movie nails it with scenes from iconic noir films featuring absolute legends like Humphrey Bogart, Ingrid Bergman, Cary Grant, and Bette Davis. And Steve Martin, he's right there in the mix, talking to them like it's the most natural thing in the world. Tribute and tease. The film's got a dual vibe, paying homage to the classic Hollywood crime flicks while poking fun at their over-the-top tropes. We're talking femme fatales, tough guy lines, and twisty-turny plots. Classic aesthetic. Everything's in black and white, matching the original noir look perfectly. It's like hopping back in time, style-wise. Cast: Steve Martin as Rigby Reardon, Rachel Ward as Juliet Forrest, Carl Reiner, also the mastermind behind the camera, as Field Marshal von Kluck Trivia Time. The film sneaks in clips from 19 classics, like Double Indemnity, 1944, The Big Sleep, 1946, and The Postman Always Rings Twice, 1946. To keep that seamless look, costumes and sets were meticulously designed, and yep, Martin's decked out in spot-on period clothing. It's also bittersweet, as it marks the last film appearance for Edith Head, a legendary figure in costume design. Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid wowed audiences with its creativity and Steve Martin's brilliant comedic chops. While some viewers found the film's gimmick a bit distracting, most saw it as a technical marvel and a heartfelt nod to the golden age of Hollywood. Hitting theatres on May 21st, 1982, the film made quite the splash, grossing over $18 million on a $9 million budget. Not too shabby, huh? Still a darling among critics with a 77% score on Rotten Tomatoes. Fans give it a solid 6.8 out of 10 on IMDb. And if you're itching to check it out, it's up for rent on streaming services like Google Play. So whether you're a film noir fanatic or just up for a laugh, Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid is one crazy ride you don't want to miss. Grab some popcorn, kick back and enjoy the show. The 1982 flick Fighting Back, also known as Death Vengeance, is a crime drama directed by Lewis Teague. It stars Tom Skerritt as the lead character John D'Angelo, your regular guy who decides to fight back when crime barges its way into his life. Plot summary: John D'Angelo runs a shop in Philly and is getting real fed up with the rising crime rate around town. Things hit a breaking point when his pregnant wife, played by Patti LuPone, gets hassled, and then his mum suffers a nasty mugging. That's when John decides enough is enough and rounds up the neighbourhood folks to form the People's Neighbourhood Patrol. Together, they hit the streets to take on criminals, drug dealers, and gang members head on. But as John's crew becomes a local sensation, he's got to juggle law enforcement, the nosy media, and the same hoodlums he's trying to stop. His thirst for justice starts to blur the line between being a hero and falling into the reckless side of vigilantism, which, let's just say, leads to some pretty intense stuff. Key cast: Tom Skerritt brings John D'Angelo to life. Patti LuPone plays the supportive and tough Lisa D'Angelo. Michael Sarrazin steps in as Vince Morelli. Yaphet Kotto stars as Ivanhoe Washington. Ted Ross appears as Lou Bobbins. Influence and reception: Fighting Back joins the ranks of 1980s vigilante films like Death Wish and Magnum Force. While it didn't hit the big time, it's still a gritty and socially aware entry in the crime genre. The movie hit the big screen on May 22nd, 1982, and though it has a modest 22% critic score on Rotten Tomatoes, fans over at IMDb gave it a 6 out of 10. Not too shabby, right? Feeling nostalgic or just curious? You can stream Fighting Back on Google Play. Give it a watch and decide if you're on Team John or if you're sticking with the law. Hey there, movie buffs! Ready for some nostalgia with a jab of adrenaline? Let's throw back to 1982 with Rocky III, the third round in the legendary Rocky saga. Now, this isn't just any sports drama. This is the classic tale of the underdog we all love, Rocky Balboa, played by the one and only Sylvester Stallone. Written, directed by, and starring Stallone himself, this film continues the saga of our favourite boxing champ facing new battles as the reigning world heavyweight title holder. Plot time. So Rocky's riding high after his big win over Apollo Creed in Rocky II. He's basking in glory, cashing in victories, and living the good life. However, things take a rocky turn, pun intended, when a fierce challenger named Clubber Lang, portrayed by Mr. T, knocks on his doors. Mickey, Rocky's old mentor, warns him that he's gotten too comfy, but Rocky's not having it. Tragedy strikes when Mickey suffers a heart attack just before Rocky and Clubber's first clash, and wham! Clubber takes Rocky down, snatching the championship belt. In the aftermath, rocked by grief and doubts, Rocky finds an unexpected friend in his old adversary, Apollo Creed, Carl Weathers. Apollo steps up to coach Rocky, bringing a fresh style to his game. Under Apollo's wing, Rocky evolves into a nimble, strategic fighter. Fast forward to the rematch at Madison Square Garden, Rocky's ready with some slick new moves up his sleeve. Awesome highlights, Mr. T's debut as Clubber Lang, turning into one of the series' most unforgettable villains. Hulk Hogan flashing in as Thunderlips, the larger-than-life wrestler against Rocky in a charity event. The emotional punch from Mickey's passing, a key moment in Rocky's personal growth. And who can forget Eye of the Tiger by Survivor, the anthem that blasted its way into movie history. Legacy and all that jazz with Rocky III, the tone shifted to more action-packed excitement, transitioning from the previous film's gritty vibe. It was a smash hit at the box office, raking in a whopping $125 million on a $17 million budget and securing Rocky Balboa's place as a pop culture icon. Not too shabby, eh? Feeling nostalgic? You can easily catch Rocky III on various streaming services. It's even free to stream on the Pluto app. Hey there, movie buffs and thriller enthusiasts. Let me take you back to 1982 for a hidden gem that combines horror, suspense, and a touch of the unexpected. We're talking about Visiting Hours, a Canadian slasher thriller directed by Jean-Claude Lord. This flick showcases stars like Michael Ironside, Lee Grant, Linda Pearl, and yes, the one and only William Shatner. Plot summary: meet Deborah Ballin, played by the phenomenal Lee Grant. Deborah's a fierce TV journalist who isn't afraid to speak up, especially when it comes to defending women affected by domestic violence. But when she gets on the wrong side of a psycho killer, Colt Hawker, Michael Ironside, things take a dark turn. After a terrifying attack at her home, Deborah ends up in the hospital. But Colt isn't done with her yet. He sneaks into the hospital, causing chaos and ramping up the body count in a cat-and-mouse chase you won't forget. And then there's the brave young nurse, portrayed by Linda Pearl, who gets caught up in this deadly game. When it first hit the theatres, Visiting Hours stirred up mixed feelings among critics. Some were hooked by its nail-biting suspense and Ironside's terrifying portrayal, while others felt the pacing was a bit off and leaned too much into exploitation. Despite this, it snagged a cult following among horror fans looking for more substance behind the screams. In an interesting twist, it came out the same year as Halloween 2, another hospital-based horror, but Visiting Hours focuses more on psychological thrills over supernatural scares. Did you know? Visiting Hours made it to the infamous UK Video Nasties list back in the early 80s. British censors thought it was way too violent and obscene. Released on May 28, 1982, the film's holding on to a 14% critic score on Rotten Tomatoes and a 5.710 on IMDb. And if you're itching to check it out for yourself, you won't find it on the usual streaming platforms right now. Luckily, someone's uploaded it on YouTube, so catch it while it's hot and before it gets taken down. Hit that link in the description to dive into the thrills.